I stepped into the forest at first light. The air felt thin, almost watchful. One had taken this route many times. A simple loop, quiet, remote. Nothing to fear, or so I told myself. The first sign came early. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. I thought it was a deer, but the sound repeated. Same sharp crack, same distance, as if something kept perfect pace. I slowed. The forest slowed with me. The wind did not move. Even the birds went silent. I told myself the trail was safe. Still, my steps quickened, and the steps behind me matched. I reached a fork I knew by heart, except it was wrong. Both paths curved left. Both were narrow. Both looked freshly turned over, as if someone had dragged something heavy. I whispered into the air. No answer. Only that quiet pressure, like breath on the back of my neck. I chose the wider path. My boots sank slightly. The soil felt disturbed, unsettled. A soft voice drifted through the trees. Not words, just a murmur. A long, low hum that rose and fell, like someone testing the air. I stopped. The hum stopped. I took one step, it returned, closer, as if sliding between trunks. My chest tightened. I wanted to call out, but something in that humming told me not to. The trail narrowed. Branches closed in. My shoulders brushed bark. I felt watched. No, followed. No, herded. Another fork appeared. Impossible. There should have been none. Both routes led deeper, darker, tighter. The hum returned behind me. Soft, steady, almost pleased. I chose the right path this time. My breath shook. My hands trembled. I could feel the trees shift around me. Not move, shift. As if the forest adjusted its shape each time I blinked. At the next bend, I saw footprints. Large, bare, pressed deep in the damp soil. They faced the direction I had come from, as if someone had been walking backward. Ahead of me, the hum slid along the trail again. My knees weakened. I wanted to run, but the forest felt too close, too aware. The trail continued to tighten until I had to turn sideways. My pack scraped bark. Something brushed my hood. A fingertip, a twig. I could not tell. I whispered, "I just want out." The hum answered. A slow rising note, like a smile forming in the dark. Then the trees suddenly opened. A clearing. A familiar stone marker. The exit trail. Relief flooded me. But when I glanced back, the path behind me was gone. Only dense forest, thick and silent. The hum faded, not retreating, waiting. I left the forest without looking back. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is still, a faint vibration rises in my walls. The same slow hum, as if the trail remembers me. The campground was almost empty by the time the sun slipped behind the ridge. Just a faint glow on the horizon and a dark line of trees waiting above it. I had chosen the farthest site on purpose. No families, no late-night music, just wind and branches and my own thoughts. My tent faced the tree line. Beyond that, miles of wilderness. No roads, no houses, nothing. The first sound came as I was boiling water. A short, clipped whistle from the dark. Not a bird call, too deliberate, too even. Then another, same pitch, same length, as if someone were copying the exact sound from a recording. I called out without thinking. "Hello." Silence pressed back. The fire popped. The trees held their breath. I told myself it was some strange bird. I kept moving, trying to look casual, like I was not listening for every twig. A few minutes later, a voice floated from the tree line. "Still out there." The words were spoken softly, almost lazy. Not quite male, not quite female. Like someone refusing to commit. I froze, holding the pot halfway off the flame. "Who is that?" I asked. My voice sounded too small, too alone. The tree line answered with a faint laugh. Then the same words, slightly closer. "Still out there." A chill crawled down my back. I could not see anyone. The firelight reached only a little way, and beyond that, just layered darkness between trunks. "Do you need help?" I tried. No answer. Only the wind, returning, moving the branches in a slow, uneasy sway. I told myself it was another camper. Someone taking a walk, trying to spook me for fun. I ate quickly, back to the tent, back to the zipper and thin nylon walls that felt like armor only because I needed them to. Inside, I checked my phone. No service, of course. I used the flashlight anyway, even though the battery was low. The circle of light on the ceiling made the tent feel smaller, safer. I must have drifted off for a while. I woke to the sound of footsteps moving through dry leaves, not running, not sneaking, just walking, unhurried, circling. I held my breath. The steps stopped near my head, right outside the tent wall. Fabric brushed lightly, as if a hand hovered there, not quite touching. Then the voice, barely above, a whisper. Still out there. The words were right beside my ear. I could hear the shape of the mouth on the other side of the nylon. My throat locked. I could not answer. I could barely think. The voice moved a little, pacing along the side of the tent. The tone never changed. Still out there, over and over, like a question asked by someone who already knew. I grabbed the flashlight and dared to click it on. The beam hit the tent wall, bright and close. The footsteps stopped. The voice fell silent. The air felt thick, like the whole site was holding a breath that would not end. I forced myself to unzip the flap just an inch. Cold air slid in. I pushed the light through the gap and swept it across the clearing. No one, just the fire ring, black and dead, and the edge of the tree line standing utterly still. I pulled the zipper closed again. My hands shook so much, the teeth clicked. I sat there, knees pressed to my chest, light still on, waiting for the voice to return. Instead, the woods went quiet in a new way. Not natural quiet. A covered quiet like something had been placed over my sight. Time stretched. I do not know how long I sat there. Long enough for the flashlight to dim to a weak glow. That was when I heard it, not outside, but above me. Footsteps on top of the tent. Soft depressions in the fabric, moving from head to foot, like someone walking carefully from one end to the other. The weight was not quite enough to collapse the poles, just enough to press down the thin ceiling toward my face. I lay on my back, watching the shape move, afraid to blink. It paused over my chest. I could feel the pressure on my ribs. The voice came again, and now it seemed to seep through the weave of the fabric, from all directions at once. Still out there. My voice cracked when I answered, yes. The pressure eased. The steps retreated, crossing the tent once more. Then the weight was gone. I could hear the leaves again, branches, wind. Then, from the tree line, much farther now, the same question called out, almost playful. Still, out there. The sound faded into the dark. I did not sleep. I sat waiting for dawn to arrive. When the first grey light appeared, I crawled out of the tent. My legs felt hollow. There were no footprints around the site. No sign of anyone walking on the tent, but the fabric above me was stretched, thinned, as if something heavy had pressed there for a long time. I packed in a rush. As I hoisted my bag, I glanced toward the tree line. Far between the trunks, almost at the limit of sight, a figure stood, too tall, too still. Head tilted slightly, toward my empty campsite. Even with the distance, I thought I saw the mouth move. One slow, careful question, forming on lips that had asked it many times. Still out there. I turned away and walked down the trail toward the exit road, trying not to listen. Still, on some nights now, when I pass a park, or stand at the edge of my own yard, facing the dark line of trees, a thought rises before I can push it down. I am not the one wondering who is out there anymore. Something else is, and it has not stopped asking. I reached the overlook late in the afternoon, when the sun was melting into a dull orange smear across the far ridge. The air felt cold in a way that suggested the night would come fast. I had been hiking alone for hours. My legs were tired, my water almost gone, and the narrow path along the ravine felt like a line drawn too close to danger. I stopped to rest on a flat rock and looked across the drop. The ravine was deep, filled with shadow, a long chasm carved through the wilderness. That was when I saw him. A man standing on the opposite side, motionless, facing me. He wore no pack, no jacket, no visible gear, just dark clothing and an expression I could not read from that distance. I lifted a hand in greeting. He did not move. The wind stirred between us. Leaves tumbled into the ravine, disappearing into the dark below. After a long moment, he raised his arm, slowly, as if matching my gesture, a few breaths too late. I felt a ripple of unease. Still, I forced myself to wave as if everything were normal. The man lowered his arm, but he did not look away, not even once. I gathered my things and stepped back onto the trail. When I glanced across again, he was still watching, not walking. Not adjusting his stance, just watching. The path descended toward the ravine floor, eventually crossing a narrow bridge, made of 2 old planks lashed together with rope. I had crossed it before, but only in daylight. The idea of using it near dusk made my stomach knot as I approached the switchback. I checked the opposite side once more. He was gone. Relief came first, followed by the sharp sting of dread. I scanned the ridge, but saw only trees and the long, pale streak of sky above them. The trail continued to darken. Branches arched overhead, closing the light, funneling me toward the ravine crossing. Halfway down, I heard footsteps on gravel from somewhere above. Slow, measured, a heavy rhythm descending the path behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. Silence dripped down the switchback like cold water. I turned, but I could see only the curve of the trail. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded thin, fragile. No answer. I hurried downward, boots slipping on loose stones. The ravine felt deeper now, as if the earth itself had sunk while I was not looking. At the bottom, the bridge waited. 2 narrow planks, dark with age, swaying slightly in the breeze. I stepped onto the first plank. It groaned beneath me. A sound echoed from behind. Not footsteps this time, but a low voice, speaking with calm certainty. "I know this place." I froze. The voice drifted down the switchback, filling the dim space around the bridge. "I know these paths," the voice added. "Closer now, as well as you do." My breath stuttered. I scanned the shadows above, trying to find the speaker. But the trees formed tangled bars that hid everything beyond a few paces. The voice continued, still calm, as if amused. "Crossing before dusk is never wise." My hands shook on the rope railing. The planks swayed. The ravine exhaled a cold draft that touched the back of my neck. "Who are you?" I called out. The answer came from the trees just behind the bridge. "A man who waits." I turned. He stood at the edge of the switchback, less than a dozen paces from me. Close enough for me to see the slow rise and fall of his chest, the faint tilt of his head. He looked exactly the same as when I had seen him across the ravine. "How did you?" I began. He stepped forward, interrupting with a quiet phrase that chilled me more than any threat. "You came the long way. I came the right way." The sky above the ravine shifted from orange to bruised blue. Night was falling. Fast. I backed farther onto the bridge. The planks trembled beneath my weight. If he followed, they might not hold both of us. The man reached the first plank, but did not step onto it. He lifted his gaze to me, eyes steady, unblinking. "You should not be here," he said. "Not when the light runs out." "I'm leaving," I whispered. "I'm crossing. Just let me go." His lips curved into the smallest suggestion of a smile. Not kind, not cruel, just knowing. "Cross then," he said softly. "If the bridge wants you." I moved one step at a time. Each plank groaned louder than the last. The ravine breathed cold air upward, rising in small currents that swirled under my boots. When I reached the middle, I felt something shift. Not under me, around me. The woods fell silent. The air grew heavier. The ropes twitched as if brushed by unseen hands. I looked back. The man no longer stood at the start. He was at the far end now, waiting for me on the side I needed to reach. I nearly lost my balance. The planks swayed violently. "How did you?" The words scraped out of me. He tilted his head as if the answer were obvious. "I know this place," he said again. "Better than you ever will." I forced myself forward, heart hammering, vision shaking with each step. I did not dare look down into the black throat of the ravine. When I reached solid ground, the man stepped aside. But he did not let me pass. "You crossed," he murmured. "That is enough." I edged around him, keeping my shoulders tight to the rocky wall. He did not touch me. He did not follow. But as I climbed the far trail toward the fading light, his voice rose from behind, soft and steady. "I will wait here, in case you come back." I did not turn. I did not breathe until the ravine was far behind me. Still, some nights, when my thoughts drift to narrow bridges and deep shadows, I hear his words quietly returning. A promise or a warning. I will wait. I reached the dense section of the forest just after the last light faded. The sky above the branches had turned a deep, muted blue, the kind that warned me I should have stopped earlier. My map showed a small shelter, a short walk ahead, but the canopy was thick here, far denser than I remembered. My headlamp beam barely carved a tunnel through it. The forest noise shifted as soon as I stepped under the heavier limbs. The air felt warmer and strangely muffled, like the sound around me was being held inside a closed hand. I walked slowly, trying not to think about how alone I was out here with no signal. No landmarks, and only a thin beam of light to keep the dark at distance. Then came the first whisper, a low hiss from somewhere to my left. Not wind, not an animal. It had cadence, a rhythm, like syllables dragged through leaves. I stopped. The whisper stopped. I shone my light between the trunks. Nothing moved. No eyes reflected back. Just darkness stacked behind darkness. I kept walking. A few steps later, the whispering returned. This time, on my right, closer, threaded with breath. I thought I heard my name. I froze as the air tightened around me. The whisper stretched long, almost curling through the branches. "Do not stop now." The voice seemed to float, never coming from one direction, shifting sides as if circling above me in slow spirals. I felt the instinct to run, but the canopy made everything feel too narrow, too enclosed, like any sudden movement would draw something closer. I called out, my voice small in the heavy dark. "Who is there?" The reply came instantly, spoken with a soft certainty that made my skin crawl. "We hear you." The words drifted from above, from a height far higher than any branch my light could reach. I stepped backward, heart pounding, headlamp trembling in my grip. Another voice joined the first, sliding through the canopy as if woven between leaves. "You walked too far," it murmured. "Now you hear us." The two voices rose and fell, like breath shared between shadows. Then a third voice joined, faint but rising from the forest floor behind me. "We have been waiting." I spun, light flashing across roots, ferns, empty space. But the voice had come from only a few paces away, almost beside me, like someone leaning in to see my face. My throat tightened. The forest seemed to press inward, crowding close enough that the branches felt alive, listening. I whispered, "I need to leave." The canopy answered, not with a command, but with a gentle suggestion that felt like a hand guiding my shoulder. "Then walk," the first voice murmured. "We will follow." The chill that filled me bled all the way to my fingertips. I did not want them following. I did not want them near me at all. I forced myself forward. Each step echoed softly, as though the ground had grown hollow beneath me. The whispers kept pace. Above me, beside me, sometimes ahead, as though leading me deeper. "We know this path," one murmured, a phrase too similar to something I had heard before in another part of the wilderness. A pattern I did not want to recognize. I tried to stay on the trail, but the canopy twisted the light, bending shadows until every direction looked wrong. The trees seemed closer together than they should have been, their trunks leaning inward as if listening for my breath. At one point, my foot caught on something soft, like cloth. I shone my light down and saw nothing there. But the voices shifted as though amused. "You almost found it," one of them whispered. I kept walking, faster now, fighting the urge to break into a run. The canopy thickened again, crowding down so low that I had to duck to pass beneath some branches. My headlamp flickered. The whispers rose gently, like a collective inhale. "Stay with us. the light died in one sputtering breath. Darkness swallowed everything. I could hear them now, not just whispers, but the faint sound of movement. Leaves turning, soil shifting, branches bending under a weight I could not see. I reached into my pack with shaking hands and found my spare light. I clicked it on, terrified it would fail too. A pale beam cut through the dark. The forest ahead opened slightly, just enough to show a shape on the path. Not a person, not an animal. Just a tall form leaning forward, as though listening to the ground. It straightened slowly when the light touched it. I could not make out features, only the outline of someone shifted wrong, tilted in a way a body should not tilt. Behind me, the voices rose as one. Walk, so I did. I kept my light fixed on the shape until it stepped off the path without sound, as though sliding into the trunks like smoke. The canopy thinned ahead. A faint glow seeped between the leaves. I followed it, ignoring the soft whispers that drifted from both sides. When I finally broke out into open air, the voices fell silent, as if a door had shut. I did not look back, not once. Yet every so often, when I walk beneath trees, even in daylight, I swear I hear one breath rise above the rustling branches. Not words, just the suggestion of them. A reminder that somewhere under the canopy, something still listens for the sound of my steps. I reached the clearing near the end of my hike, when the night had settled into a heavy, breathless quiet. The trees around it stood in a perfect ring, too perfect, as though shaped by hands rather than weather. My legs were tired, my throat felt dry. I wanted to keep moving, but the clearing seemed to draw me in, a soft invitation in the middle of so much darkness. I stepped inside. The air changed immediately, warmer still. Thick with a faint scent I could not place, like damp stone or old fabric. I told myself I would rest only for a moment. The ground was smooth, almost polished. The grass lay flat in a circular pattern, as though something heavy had once lain there and left without a trace. I sat near the edge, but not too close to the trees. The branches leaned inward in a way that made it feel like they were listening. I pulled out a small snack, took one bite, and heard a soft breath behind me. I turned fast, light raised, nothing there, only the quiet ring of trunks. The breath came again, this time from the far side of the clearing. Then another, from somewhere near the center. Not wind, not animals. Just slow, steady breaths coming from places where no one stood. I rose to my feet. The air felt thick against my skin, as if the clearing itself had begun to breathe. I took one step back toward the trail. The breaths grew louder, gathering rhythm. Not in unison, but overlapping like a crowd inhaling in the dark. A voice emerged from that tangled sound. Soft, almost gentle. "Do not leave yet." I froze. The words seemed to drift from above the clearing, from some unseen corner of the night sky. "I just want to pass through," I whispered. The clearing responded with a hush that felt heavy, as if it did not like my answer. A second voice rose, lower, closer to the ground. "You came too far to turn away now." My breath hitched. I reached the edge of the clearing, boots touching the first line of roots. The trees leaned subtly inward, forming a soft barrier that made my exit feel smaller than it had before. I pushed through, forcing myself into the shadowed trail. But the clearing was not done. Soft footsteps followed, light as falling ash, not chasing, pacing, mirroring. When I turned my light back, the clearing looked empty. But the breaths persisted, slow and deep, rising from the circle as though the ground itself had lungs. I walked faster. The trail twisted, branches brushing my pack, the forest narrowing until I could barely see a few paces ahead. The breaths followed, sometimes far behind, sometimes close enough that I could feel a faint stir of air on the back of my neck. I told myself to stay calm, keep moving, find the ridge, find the familiar tree line. But the voices returned, not from behind now, but from the trees on both sides. "Do not rush. You were seen. You were heard." Each voice had a different tone, yet they all held the same quiet certainty, as if the clearing had divided itself among the branches. My light flickered, the path dipped. roots twisted like knotted fingers under my boots. Then the forest opened. A small rise ahead, the faint glow of sky beyond it, a promise of space. I climbed fast, hands grabbing at branches, heart hammering so loudly that even the breaths behind me seemed to pause. At the top of the rise, I looked back. The clearing was visible through a narrow break in the trees, a pale round shape etched into the dark. Something stood at its center now, tall, still facing me. I could not see its features, only the outline of a figure that had not been there before. And though the distance should have swallowed it, I heard its breath slow, drawn out, patient. Then a whisper drifted up the slope, rising through branches with impossible clarity. "We stay awake." My knees weakened, but I tore my gaze away and fled down the far side of the ridge, not stopping until the forest thinned and the night opened wide again. Even now, far from those woods, when I lie in bed and the room grows quiet, I sometimes hear that same breath hovering in the dark. Not close, not far, just waiting, because I left the clearing. But I do not think it ever let me go.